For thousands of years, philosophers, thinkers, and prophets have besmirched money and called it the root of all evil. Be that as it may, money is also the apogee of human tolerance. Money is more open-minded than language, state laws, cultural codes, religious beliefs, and social habits. Money is the only trust system created by humans that can bridge almost any cultural gap, and that does not discriminate on the basis of religion, gender, race, age, or sexual orientation. Thanks to money, even people who don't know each other and don't trust each other can nevertheless cooperate effectively. As you remember from the Gospel of Timothy, which isn't, I don't think it's written by a guy named Timothy. I think it's to a guy named Timothy, but it's supposedly written by a guy named Paul. But the scholars feel that there are like a bunch of different Pauls. There are a bunch of people writing in there who are like, yeah, this was Paul writing to you, Timothy. And I don't know if you've read some of those books, but they say some ridiculous stuff. They say some ridiculous stuff. So that's not the basis for anything that we're going to be talking about here. I believe all of that should be questioned. But I did want to recite unto thee the verse for reference, lest thou besmirch my reputation. So the famous verse, which gets misquoted, is Timothy 6:10 from the King James for extra, impact. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. And I think perhaps in a congregation like ours, we don't buy into like, well, it's in the book. Even if we were Unitarian Christians or Universalist Christians as a congregation-wide identity, right? Some of you may be Unitarian or Universalist Christians. The whole basis of those traditions is not taking the book as if it were the truth, because they looked at the book, right? So Unitarians, the founding idea was, they were like, I don't get that Trinity thing. And so they started looking through the book and they were like, wait a minute, this book contradicts itself thousands and thousands of times. That's not this sermon, but somebody made a map with all the contradictions, and it's ridiculous. It looks like a galaxy of contradictions in there. And so the Unitarians and the Universalists later in America, their whole position basically was that no matter how you interpret that book, it requires interpretation. You never have an interpretation-free version of the Bible because it contradicts itself, right? So no matter who, nobody has the right tradition according to the book itself. And one of the verses I do follow after because it makes sense to me, I believe it's in, I forget who, but it says, test all things and uphold that which is good. Test all, so it's right there in the Bible. We've got, if you want to be a faithless heathen, you've got scriptural reference for that. No, sorry, I'm still testing all things. I can't have faith. God told me not to. Okay, so in addition, we ought to question, I believe, verses like this. And I think people here already question that. But we may have in our cultural consciousness, is that too fancy to say? Cultural consciousness. We may have this built in that like something about money, wealth, currency, trade is a little bit like, oh, that's besmirchable. You could besmirch that. I know personally, having grown up out of a Christian tradition and then straight into New Age traditions, this is all up in the New Age tradition, right? That like, oh, that worldly, and oh, don't be so attached. And there's some value in that, I believe, if we haven't already besmirched value. Right? Like where's wealth? What's value? So I think it's important for us to look at what is in the cultural consciousness. I don't like that as it comes out of my mouth. It's the best I got. Around money. Is it evil? Is it good? Is it whatever? Right? So for the love of money is the root of all evil. All right. Paul, that's a single cause fallacy, if nothing else. It's a single cause fallacy, if nothing else. Okay, so Today, in the month of July, I have had in my mind a theme of interdependence and as well a theme of classical liberal ideas. Just because while the founding of America, right, July, Independence Day. Is that the song? I don't know. That's mine. I got lyrics for that. I'll sing on at coffee hour. You know, the idea behind this has some pretty neat philosophical notions. And those notions are by no means complete. They're by no means free of harm, but there are some cool jewels in there. And so one of my ideas for this month was, well, let's play with some classical liberal ideas and see if we can pull some jewels out of the muck. So money, and particularly free market economies, is one of these classical liberal ideas. What does Reverend Fudge tell me to say? Oh, these type of ideas are incomplete. They have many flaws. They've probably needed to be updated for about 200 years or so. You know, I'm about to update this computer. It's maybe 7 years old, right? But like American democracy is what, 240, how old am I? 43 years old, right? So I don't know, the ideas are probably like 43 years out of date. They may need some upgrades, but I believe they form the foundation for what comes next. They form the foundation for what, so we have to get to what comes next. I believe that a lot of these classical liberal ideas form the foundation for what comes next, because we can't go back to benevolent tyrants. We can't go back to war. Oh, let's create an interconnected environmentalist, you know, web-based, eco-centric, you know, society. And to do that, all we have to do is go back before the Western Enlightenment, and we'll start from there. We'll scrap that. I don't think you can go backwards like that, right? We're gonna have to go forward. And unfortunately, the jewels in the Western Enlightenment tradition, the parts that are really cool, we have not integrated yet. The parts about actual free market economies that don't privilege some at the expense of a few. The idea of actual representative democracies, where one of the evils that money can do, which is to buy political influence, isn't a factor. We haven't even gotten to why the French had a revolution yet. I think we're going to have to integrate those before we get web-based modified consensus, eco-constituencies that are what must come next if we're going to survive. Okay, there was my pep talk to myself. That's what the talk is about today. All right, so for some perspective, you know we're in a global pandemic, right? Some people don't know that. I noticed when I looked on the internet research, I realized some people, they don't know or they actively deny it. Right? Okay, but I wanted to give us some perspective, because would you agree, being in a global pandemic still, I mean, it was hard enough at the beginning, but to still, is it a little bit tiring? What would you, who says tiring? Okay, angst-ridden? Okay, you can raise your hand for as many as you want. Anxiety-provoking? Okay, exhausting? Okay, and we could go on with the empathy session. So it's a little bit tiring, but I wanted to give us some perspective. In pre-enlightenment, I have to use quotes around enlightenment because it wasn't all that enlightened, but that's what they call it in the history books. In pre-enlightenment times, they had to post guards around the houses of the dead from plague so that people wouldn't steal clothing, because getting new cloth for 99% of the humans in those cultures, the primarily European cultures we're talking about at the moment, that was like maybe a once or twice in a lifetime event, just cloth, just textiles. And so in plague times, they would wait for someone to die, and then they would steal the clothes from the plague victims. And societal authorities, you know how mean they make you wear a mask inside the coffee shop, and they want you to they try to encourage vaccination even though they are not forcing it. Those mean old authorities, well, in those days, the societal authorities guarded the bodies of the dead so that they could burn the plague-ridden clothes before people stole them, which was one of the major causes of epidemic. And I don't think you could have a pandemic because it wasn't a global culture yet, but epidemic in those times. So for a little perspective, we're doing better than that. We're exhausted, we're heartbroken, we're angst-ridden, we're frustrated, but at least people aren't spreading the thing by stealing the clothes of plague victims. Some would propose that new ideas around currency and free markets are why I actually need some new shirts. Have you seen this shirt a lot on me? I can just wander on down to the store and just buy textiles. And I don't feel particularly rich. Most of the days when I wake up, my new age training is making me feel richer today. But I wake up, I don't feel particularly rich, but I could go buy a shirt and not have to like steal it from the dead. Pretty cool. Okay, perspective. Lately, I've been doing quite a bit of adulting. Have you heard this term? Have you ever done it? Have you done any adulting lately? Has anyone done any? Okay, if you haven't heard this term, you need to know. It's probably going to be in the next edition of the Webster's or the Oxford or something like that. Adulting is a verb for when you accomplish a bunch of the banal tasks it requires to go on living if your parents aren't doing them for you, right? Adulting, right? So lately I've been doing a lot of adulting. I spent a lot of time at DMV this last month. I didn't go to the DMV until COVID numbers were down and I got a vaccine and all of this kind of stuff. I was like, I don't know about the DMV. Nevada County DMV, really nice, so nice. Oh my gosh, it was not the DMV I have trained for, but still, I waited a while and I had to remove a lien from my car from a dealer out of business. I hope you don't have to do something like this. I hope you don't have to do something like this. So it only took me 4 visits. Only took me 4 visits to the DMV. And to do this, you have to fill out a statement of facts. Right? This is how many miles are on the car. I haven't done this. This is how much Kelley Blue Book. So they made me do arithmetic. I had to go to the Kelley Blue Book site, take the lowest possible amount it would be worth and the highest possible, and then add them together and divide by 2. Arithmetic, adulting, good gracious. And put it on my statement that this car is worth $633. That's why I'm gonna donate all $633 of it to the Sierra Club or the ACLU or NPR or somebody with initials as soon as I can get the lien removed from it. Brought all that in, I had a whole packet of old registration things and receipts and stuff like that. Then they send me home, well, you need this. Okay, I've got it, here I am. Oh, good try. We can see you're earnest. You're not trying to pull the wool over our eyes, but you need this. So the last one is you need a motor vehicle bond. Motor vehicle, did you even know that is such a thing? No, so it's where the bond company, I gave them $100 and some odd, and they like ensure that just in case I got all this documentation, but I'm still lying to the DMV, that the dealer can't come and make the DMV liable if they, even though I mailed a certified letter to the dealer to get it back unopened to prove that they do not exist. But if they happen to pop back into existence and go, this guy, no, they go, hey, talk to Surety One. They hold the bond on this thing. Adulting. And once I got it done, oh man, did that feel good. Just like by comparison, I don't know if it would have felt good on its own, but by comparison, that felt great. Okay. Then, right, so they don't want to be on the hook for all that. Now, then don't even get me started. You guys probably haven't done that. It's kind of a rarer thing, but some of you have bought a house, right? And there's this contingency and that contingency, and most of us who do it aren't paying cash like my grandpa did. He just like saved up from the Navy and the Department of Water and then like bought a houseboat, lived on that until they had some more money, and then sold that and bought a house with the cash. And good gracious. So no, you send the loan thing and they're like, Well, who's your human resources director? Can I talk to them? I mean, I'll give you the board president. Will that work? And do you have a year-to-date profit and loss statement? Okay, anyway, blah, 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 blah. And then on the house itself, you got to sign to remove every contingency. And so as I'm doing this, signing, I said to myself, this contract sucks, but our social contract is awesome. Our social contract is awesome. Because what I saw influenced by my research was a whole lot of fairness. That we have built in. So as much as they sometimes don't work, as much as decks are still stacked against folk, we also have built into our society ways that we can try to assure that we don't cheat each other, right? Like do you want a receipt with that, sir? You know, and we just print that stuff out. And then, you know, once things get bigger and more complicated, we get enough lawyers to work on it all night. You can figure out ways to cheat people. But the idea behind it is actually about fairness. I just thought that was, so, in all my adulting, there was so much fairness just built into the system. Okay, what even is money? Theoretically, money is a portable, convenient symbol for wealth or value. A portable, convenient symbol for wealth or value. That's a pretty amazing invention in itself. You can read Harari's book, and he talks about how cool that just a mental construct that we invented causes so much change. Really cool. But I'm going to propose it symbolizes something more. It symbolizes trust. Now, I don't want you to get the idea that I mean like cutesy, feely trust. Oh, let's do a trust fall with my lender. I will not be doing a trust fall with my lender, although our lender's kind of cute. They've been sending Maria little notes. It's the 4th of July. What are you doing? Don't give up on your house hunting project. Thanks, Tim. Okay. No trust falls with the lender. But what do I mean? Gosh, I think that type of trust may be a bit out of reach for our society at the moment. Rather, it's a kind of trust that is an innate part of our human drive for fairness, our human drive for fairness. So we humans, it is proposed by many, especially in the realm of game theory. If you're into that kind of stuff, you can look up all this research on non-zero sum games. I'm even reading a book, which I can't recommend yet because I'm not very far into it. It's called Non-Zero. And the proposal is that every development in human society is a development on our ability to collaborate with one another. Every development in human society is an ability to collaborate with one another. We know this even from Darwin's research, where he really points out it's not survival of the fittest like a social Darwinist, which is, they're not really doing Darwinism, like a social Darwinist, with air quotes, might propose. It's survival of the kindest. We Homo sapiens have preserved instincts to work together. That's how our early bands out-survived other early bands. Really pretty neat. So in the discipline of game theory, we find that a major contributor to human thriving has been the strong predilection, that's a good word, to tit-for-tat thinking, a type of golden rule built into us that allows us to cooperate. We have a bias from early primate bands that says, as long as you don't betray my trust, I won't betray yours. As long as you don't betray my trust, I won't betray yours. This is, they believe, and there's some real cool mathematical stuff you can watch simulations of, that tends to win the most of a certain type of game, especially non-zero sum games, where the games where if you work together, both get a profit. If you have the idea, if you don't betray my trust, I won't betray yours, those ones tend to win more often. And then in that, there also is, if you betray my trust, then all bets are off. And this is also quite important. So it's not trust falls with my lender. Oh, it's tit for tat thinking. But the research tends to show that when we are the first one to extend the hand of peace, this is how Homo sapiens tend to create the most benefit and advance forward into greater and greater complexity. Kind of cool. In one study by Starmans, that's a cool name, Starmans, by Starmans, Sheskin, and Bloom, they show that people prefer fair inequality over unfair equality. People, according to their meta-analysis, prefer an unequal society if it's fair, if they feel it's an actual meritocracy. The inequality signifies hope to them. Like, oh, well, if you can get there, then I can get there. Over an unfair equal society, like everybody's suffering equally, but some people are being, treated unfairly. So we have built into us this thing of like, we want things to be fair. And this is a lot of where the construction of money comes from. Ooh, this is great. Okay. Sometimes we're even able to give the benefit of the doubt with our tit for tat thinking. In the simulation I played online, this game theory game, they said copycat wins the most in non-zero sum games. A copycat tactic is the best one, but in some games, a copy kitten works even better, where they assume you're going to mess up or make mistakes sometimes, and they give you one chance to make a mistake. And then they'll still, oh, you messed up, but I'll cooperate this time. And then it becomes tit for tat. So we have this built into us. Okay, because of this, we may find that fairness is the root of all human good. So like I said, I'm not one for zero sum or what's it called? Got so many dang fallacies lately, but I'm not one for single cause fallacies, but I might be willing to tentatively propose that fairness could be the root of all human good, especially because it doesn't depend on us all like taking the real beautiful words of Christ into our hearts and just like being total altruistic saint all the time. It just depends on us being copycats and copy kittens, which we Homo sapiens are really good at. Fairness may be the root of all human good. And that's the main point of this talk. It's not about changing people's hearts so much as contacting the innate drive for fairness that already exists in us. Not changing human nature, but using human nature to all of our advantage. Section 2. Yeah, we're on time. In God we trust. In God we trust. So there's a pessimistic, that slogan's on the US dollar, right? Paper currency. Since 1957, a venerable tradition since the founding of our culture plus 200 years. In God we trust. Okay, so there's a cute pessimistic way of viewing this you may have heard, which is, okay, hang out with hippies for a while. We come up with theories for everything. Like, yeah, that's on there because the actual God of our culture is money, the all-powerful dollar. I also think I read that in a Mad magazine once upon a time. So that pessimistic view says, it says in God we trust because the God we trust in is money as a culture. Okay, I mean, that is what it is, but I wanted today to take an optimistic pivot on that if money, because it's a symbol, symbolizes fairness and the God we trust in is money, then we all as a culture worship fairness. We all as a culture worship fairness. Okay, I don't know if you're gonna buy my theory, but I'm gonna get a YouTube channel and start shouting that till my face gets red, and I think that's what makes people believe in things. I'll have streams of text going along in the bottom. In Harari's book, again, a lot of my quotes today, I got a lot of quotes from Harari and Steven Pinker today. He describes the development of gold as currency, saying, people continued to speak mutually incomprehensible languages. Gosh, I love his word choice today. I don't know why. Mutually incomprehensible languages, obey different rulers, worship distinct gods, but all believed in gold and silver and in gold and silver coins. Okay? Different rulers, different languages, different gods, but everyone believed in the power, the made up power. Right? These are just, they're stamped, that they're not all that useful. They all believed in the made up power of gold and silver coins. Without this shared belief, global trading networks would have been virtually impossible. And it didn't make it into the sermon, but the whole reason like why I can buy this shirt or the new one that's going to come along next week is because of division of labor. If you get people whose job it is to make shirts, they can make shirts faster and quicker and more efficiently, and then you can buy them for cheaper because you're over there doing your, preach a sermon and make Instagram posts, whatever my job is in the late mid 2020s. You can do all of these things more efficiently, and supposedly, according to the free market ideology, that actually can become a rising tide that does raise all of us little boats. Okay. A quote from Voltaire's Philosophie, a founding text of the Revolution, that's the Enlightenment period. Voltaire is famous. You Unitarians may like, he's famous for that one, Remember the Atrocities, in speaking about organized religions. So Voltaire says, take a view of the Royal Exchange in London, a place more venerable than many courts of justice, where the representatives of all nations meet for the benefit of mankind. There the Jew, the Mohammedan, and the Christian transact together as though they'd all professed the same religion, and give the name of infidel to none but bankrupts. Okay, that might be a little problematic, but there the Presbyterian confides in the Anabaptist, those are our Unitarian ancestors, the Anabaptists, and the churchman depends on the Quaker's word, and all are satisfied. In God we trust. Okay, one more quote. The commentary on this from Steven Pinker's Enlightenment Now, also a really fun book. Commenting on this passage, the historian Roy Porter noted that by depicting men content and content to be content, differing but agreeing to differ, the philosophy pointed toward a rethinking of the summum bonum, a shift from God-fearingness to a selfhood more psychologically oriented. The Enlightenment thus translated the ultimate question, how can I be saved, into the pragmatic, how can I be happy, thereby heralding a new praxis of personal and social adjustment. This practice included norms of propriety, thrift, and self-restraint, and an orientation toward the future rather than the past, a conferral of dignity and prestige upon merchants and inventors rather than just on soldiers, priests, and courtiers. Translation. The liberal enlightenment shifted the sense of spirituality or ethics from religious creeds onto fairness and prosperity. These are the aims of humanists everywhere. Our current notion of free markets leave a lot of people out in the cold, but the principles from which they developed are rooted in our innate worth and dignity. We have normalized fairness and enshrined it in law in a way that has never been true for large societies before. This one's from Pinker. Oh yes, he says, today I take it for granted that if I want some milk, I can walk into a convenience store and the quart will be on the shelves. The milk won't be diluted or tainted. It will be for sale at a price I can afford, and the owner will let me walk out with it after a swipe of a card. Even though we have never met, may never see each other again, have no friends in common who can testify to our bona fides. A few doors down, I could do the same with a pair of jeans, a power drill, a computer, or a car. A lot of institutions have to be in place for these and the millions of other anonymous transactions that make up a modern economy to be consummated so easily. One more quote. I hope you don't mind them. I did a lot of reading this week, excuse me. From Harari. People are willing to do such things when they trust the figments of their collective imagination. So this is not my Jungian collective unconscious talk today. No, this is the figments of collective imagination, things like money. Trust is the raw material from which all types of money are minted. When a wealthy farmer sold his possessions for a sack of cowrie shells and traveled with them to another province, he trusted that upon reaching his destination, other people would be willing to sell him rice, houses, and fields in exchange for the shells. Money is accordingly a system of mutual trust, and not just any system of mutual trust. Money is the most universal and most efficient system of mutual trust ever devised. Whoa. So maybe there are some evils. Maybe let's say there are evils associated with money that we could easily find. And yet I wanted to present this talk because I was so stoked when I read Sapiens. This was like months and months and months ago. And a couple of these quotes are like, whoa, that is so not what culture at large tells me about money. Okay, money can contribute to evil. I picked three. I'm calling them the unholy trinity. I know Unitarians don't like things that come in threes, but I'm going out on a limb. See, maybe a little controversial. Okay, I think we can see why money becomes the root of all evil when it does so. Why it does so, when it does so. The unholy trinity. When money is used as a tool of unfairness rather than trust, money becomes evil. If I were to use so strong and unscientific of a term, money becomes evil when it's used as a tool of unfairness rather than trust, such as, what do you mean, Reverend Roger? Oh, I'm glad you asked. When societies allow the deck to be stacked against some of its members, such as like when you have, what's that lineage college application one, right? Where like, because all of your white grandparents were in college and like legacy admissions, right? So like the haves stay haves and the have-nots stay have-nots, right? Things like this. And as well, when money gives you an unequal voice in important matters like political decision making, right? So people are fine with unequal societies, research has shown, but not unfair, unequal societies. Okay, number two, when we internalize profits and externalize costs, when we internalize profits and externalize costs, such as you subsidize oil companies and leave victims of Hurricane Katrina to their own devices, right? You fund climate change so that some people get rich off of climate change. And then the people who suffer first, how did this happen? We don't know. I'm sorry. Thoughts and prayers. I believe thoughts and prayers. One of those from the book of Timothy. I think St. Paul first said, send thoughts and prayers to those in need. Sounds like him. Okay, when we subsidize business models that exhaust or despoil the commons, our natural resources, and leave the price tag to everyone else. Number three, perhaps the most insidious of all, is when we mistake gain, acquisition, and consumption for happiness. When we mistake gain, consumption, and acquisition for happiness. So good news, that's the unholy trinity, but we have a holy trinity. Oh, I'm really feeling tense about my Unitarian roots here with the holy trinity, but here it is, the holy trinity of money. Even with all this, tools are not good or evil. It's how you use them. Money can be a root of good. Can be a root of good. I won't say that it is the root of good. That's just the provocative title for the sermon. It can be a root of good when it is used as a symbol of fairness. When we use it to overcome cultural divides, because if you just sign this document, I will trust you. We have developed societal institutions that I will get paid back because I've signed the 8,000 forms that it takes to create a social contract. When we use it that way, money can be a root of good. When it is used as a convenient tool that enables things like greater cooperation, division of labor, and trade across cultural lines. And when the above enables wealth creation that does actually lift us all up. While it's true that people in the poorest societies can still find intrinsic joy and unconditional love, this is one that the hippies will say, but look at the poorest people there, they're happier than you are, you rich American ungrateful so-and-so. While this is true, research has found, at least in 2015 numbers in the United States, above 70K a year salary, you don't get any happier. Below 70K a year salary, every increase goes a long way to your well-being and thriving. Every increase below 70K. If we could lift all ships, that would be a really cool rising tide. The takeaway. Takeaway becomes something of the pith of what St. Paul, or whoever it was, may have been trying to get across. That it's not money that's the problem, but the love of money. I love money. Whew. In modern terms, we might say that we've exchanged our addiction to a substance for real relationships. We've exchanged our addiction to a substance for real relationships. When we think of money acquisition and consumption as ends in themselves, they don't make us any happier. But on the other hand, when we think of money as a tool to facilitate fairness, sharing, exchange, and generation of values, it can surprisingly become the source of tremendous good. Shouldn't I have given this sermon during a pledge drive? So what then should we do? Well, you should come to the next pledge drive. Oh my goodness, indeed. And you can pledge at any time. BT dub, that means by the way. So now you know adulting and you know what BTW means. By the way, you can make a pledge. You don't even have to be a member. You could support. Oh wait, that's later in the sermon. Hold on. What then should we do? I have three. The neutral, the action trinity. Number one, engage in non-zero behavior, thinking, and speech. What do you mean engage in non-zero behavior, thinking, and speech? It means that anytime you want to make a win-lose out of something, it's either my way or the highway, and one of us, there's only enough for the, see if you can squeak your mind just as much as you can into thinking, is there a solution by which both of our needs could be met? By getting more creative, by getting more complex. And I know more complex? Yes, complex systems are the most stable. By getting more innovative, advancing into novelty. Could I create a solution where instead of your way and my way don't mix, there might be a third way that we haven't even tried yet. Engage in non-zero thinking, behavior, whatever he said. This is the idea that the Enlightenment philosophy professed, even though we've yet to get everyone on board to practice it, that there are rising tides that can raise all ships, that more for you doesn't mean less for me. This type of thinking is at the root of our development as humans and maybe the foundation of every advance in our society. Number two, what you can do is work against all ideas of wealth as merit. How do I do that, Reverend Fadjian? This means working to overturn Citizens United, specifically, which is wealth as speech. Wealth as speech. This can mean working toward publicly funded elections, which would be the opposite of wealth as speech. This can mean teaching our youth that having a lot of followers on social media, something I'm actively going for right now, hello, does not mean, is not a source of esteem, nor an indication that the person in question is an authority. Number three, work to reverse the externalizing of costs and internalizing of profits. This means getting really good at explaining how common practices contribute to anthropogenic climate change, which first hit frontline communities who rarely benefit from any of the profits, but absorb all the costs. It means getting really good at boycotting predatory companies like bottled water companies that drain ancient aquifers from underneath their ancestral stewards while creating plastic waste. That's the opposite. That's a zero sum. It's a lose-lose. That's like, I mean, for the frontline communities, for the profiteers, it's a win-win. Okay, and it also means going beyond things like cap and trade and voting in a way that forces those who profit to also absorb the expenses of their actions. So engage in non-zero behavior, work against all ideas of wealth as merit, reverse the externalizing of costs and internalizing of profits. Because money is all about fairness, we can use it to hit people in their pocketbooks. You can use your micro donations to influence elections and get Sierra Club and ACLU ads on TV. You can donate to support your UU fellowship, which is an incubator for this type of ideas. But most of all, we can remember to build a society of trust. There's not a lot of that going around these days. Because our primate brains are built around tit-for-tat thinking, because there's not a lot of trust going around these days, this could rapidly devolve into a death spiral for our human societies. But you have the power to change that spiral by the basic ethics you already engage in every day, but also by being loudly trustworthy, safe, honoring, understanding, and forgiving. Through modeling these behaviors, you inject a much needed stimulus. Thank you, Biden, and you for the stimulus, a much needed stimulus into our interconnected web. I'll finish with the same quote I started with. For thousands of years, philosophers, thinkers, and prophets have besmirched money and called it the root of all evil. Be that as it may, money is also the apogee of human tolerance. Money is more open-minded than language, state laws, cultural codes, religious beliefs, and social habits. Money is the only trust system created by humans that can bridge almost any cultural gap, and that does not discriminate on the basis of religion, gender, race, age, or sexual orientation. Thanks to money, even people who don't know each other and don't trust each other can nevertheless cooperate effectively.